We are continuing our sermon series on Romans, and we have come to the last passage, last chapter of the epistle. And for today's meditation, I have selected the first 16 verses of the 16th chapter of Romans. Romans chapter 16, verses 1 to 16. If you read through that passage selected for today's meditation, we see the Apostle Paul winding up his letter with some words of greetings. In the first 16 verses, we can see more than 25 names mentioned. The Apostle was sending his greetings to all of them. Just like the way we say bye to our friends, when we say bye, we'll say like this, or say hi to your dad, say hi to your mom, or say hi to your brother. In the same manner, the Apostle Paul was conveying his regards to the believers in Rome. Today morning, as we move forward, I want to draw your attention towards 3 spiritual lessons that we can learn from the lives of some of the people whom he referred in these 16 verses of this last chapter of Romans. Firstly, the lesson of service. The lesson of service. We see the example, or we see the life of a person named Phoebe in the first 2 verses of this chapter. I commend to you our sister Phoebe, a servant of the church at Cherian, so that you may welcome her in the Lord, as is fitting for the saints, and help her in whatever she may require from you, for she has been a benefactor of many and of myself as well. The Apostle Paul was referring to a person named Phoebe. She was a member of the church of Cherian, a seaport of Corinth. It's considered that she was one of the believers that came to faith when Paul was ministering there in Corinth a year and a half as a pastor there. Now, if you look at the verses there, we see the Apostle Paul calling her or referring her as a servant who rendered some kind of service to the church. There were certain kinds of services that usually the women of those times does in the churches of the first century, like visiting the sick, assisting the young women, helping the poor, and things like that. And this woman, Phoebe, was involved in such kind of services. And biblical scholars are of the opinion that she was the one who was traveling to Rome at that time and was taking this letter from the Apostle Paul to the people in Rome. And that was the reason why the Apostle was introducing her to the believers in Rome. And he was telling them, as she is coming to your place, take care of her. We see a woman who was involved in the service of the kingdom of God. Understand, this service is something important for any church. The functioning of any church needs the service of the people. Christian ministry needs the service of the people. Church needs people who are willing to serve. From the first century onwards, that is what we see. When a church functioned, there was always people who are ready to do something or the other thing for the church. And Phoebe was one among them. Today morning, the Spirit of God is reminding us of that great virtue that you and I need to consider or reconsider in our lives as service to the church. But one of the common trends that happens in the present times is that people need an office or a position to do some service for the church. If someone is given an office or if someone is assigned to do something, then only people will do. Now everything is position based. But now take the example of Phoebe. I said she was referred to as a servant. The Greek word for servant is diakonon, which is the root word for deacon. And so many people argue that she was a deacon in the church of Cherian. But if you look at the office of deacon in the Bible, we see that it was a It was an office which needs certain special requirements that a woman cannot meet. In 1 Timothy 3:8 it says, deacons likewise must be men of dignity, not double-tongued or addicted to much wine or fond of sordid gain. And in 1 Timothy 3:12 it says, let deacons be husbands of one wife. Yes, it was all talking about male or men who are involved in the service of deacon. And if we study the New Testament carefully, we can see 31 different instances where this word deacon is used in an elaborate sense, in a broad sense. Deacon is seen, the word deacon is seen in the Gospel of John, where Mary, the mother of Jesus, was referring to the servants who were there in Cana, the place, the wedding place where Jesus did his first miracle. If you look at Luke 17:8 and Acts 6:12, there we see servants who are serving at the tables. And Mark 10:45, where Jesus says about himself as a deacon or a servant who came to the world to serve. So it's a word with a broad understanding. And Phoebe's case, she was not qualified enough to be a deacon in a church because she was a woman. She was not holding an office. But even after that, despite she was not holding a position in the church, despite she was not an office bearer in the church, still we see her involved in the service of the church. With an attitude of humility, with an attitude of commitment, we see this woman serving in her own capacity for the well-being of the church. She was taking care of the poor. She was meeting the needs of the widows. She was helping the poor. She was taking care of the young women. She was doing her own ways, in her own service to the church where she was posted in, where she was a part of. Serving others is something important even in the present times. We may think of service in various ways, or we may think it's if we get a position or an office we will do, but no, it is the duty of every Christian to do one or another ministry by way of serving. Ministry doesn't mean that someone should get a title for that. We need to submit ourselves to do some service for the Lord. That is what we learn from the life of this woman, Phoebe. I said one of the trends is to have an office and serve. Another trend is to be served by others rather than serving others. We want everyone to bow before us. We want everyone to give us honor. We want everyone to respect us. Look at the example of the disciples of Jesus. They also decided that at a certain point in their lives, they were debating among them who is the greatest among them. And Jesus taught them the lesson of service when he kneeled down before all of them to wash their feet in the evening of Passover celebration. Now look at the example of Phoebe again. She was not an ordinary person. She was a prominent woman in the church of Cherian. She was considered to be a patron there, and she was doing all the services for the church according to her capacity. She was committed to do that. Jürgen Moltmann, a prominent theologian, in one of his works spoke about two types of crosses. The first cross is the cross of Golgotha, where Christ was crucified. The other cross was the cross of Constantine. The cross of Emperor Constantine is referred to as a cross that he had seen in a dream when a major battle was going on. He had seen a cross with an inscription, "In this sign conquer." Immediately what he did is that he inscribed the cross and the motto on the shields of all his soldiers, and they won that battle. So there are two crosses. This theologian, Jürgen Moltmann, he was referring to two crosses, the cross of Golgotha and the cross of Constantine. One is the cross of service, the other cross is a cross of conquest. Too often we choose the second cross of conquest, rather than the cross of Jesus. The cross of Jesus is the cross of service. The cross of conquest, or the cross of Constantine, is the cross of conquest. Always that motivates us to do something for the Lord is that cross of conquest. I wonder, is that the true statement that we can say about us? Many a time we want to see others serving us. We want to see others bowing down before us. We want to see others exalting us. No, we are called to serve. We are called to do service for the Lord rather than being served by others. Today morning, let our preferences be changed from that cross of Constantine or the cross of conquest to the cross of service. We are called to serve, and it is our duty to serve. Firstly, we see the lesson of service. Secondly, we see the lesson of commitment. Now moving forward to the next two verses, verses 3 and 4, we see a couple, Priscilla and Aquila. Priscilla and Aquila, they were a Jewish couple. Luke tells about them in the book of Acts. And they were tent makers by trade. And they were living in Rome for some time. However, they were driven away from Rome by AD 52 when Claudius the emperor declared a decree to expel all the Jews from the city of Rome. And they came to the city of Corinth, and there they met the apostle Paul. They were both in the same trade, and somehow they met each other, and they were led to Christ by the apostle Paul there in Corinth. And we see this couple, Priscilla and Aquila, they were traveling along Paul to the city of Ephesus. They were helpful to lead many people to Christ and correcting people in the theological matters. We see the apostle, we see this couple in Acts 18 where they were helping Apollos to grow in the Lord and correcting him and helping him to move forward in his spiritual life. As a husband-wife team, they were moving forward to do the work of God. The Apostle Paul refers something else here in this passage. They were so committed. That's what he says. Paul says, they laid down their own necks for me. You might have been referring to a riot that happened in the city of Ephesus, which is recorded in Acts 19. A mob was trying to kill him, but his friends came for his aid and saved his life. In an environment where the followers of Christ were always persecuted and targeted, in an environment where the people of God were always being accused and tortured, this couple, this family stood for this man of God, and they were committed to protect this man of God. And they even opened their home to start house church in wherever they were in those cities. A couple, an example of a people of commitments. The apostle is leading our attention towards that couple, a couple who were ready to do anything for the church. Church needs people like that. People who are ready to lay down their necks for the Lord. Church needs people who are ready to open their houses for the Lord. Church needs people who reveal their commitment to their Lord, to their sacrificial deeds for God and the saints of God. Robert J. Morgan once told the story of a preacher who was approached by a man who wanted to join the church. This man said, he met the preacher and he said, I want to join this church, but I have a very busy schedule. I can't be called on for any service. I cannot come for any other work. I cannot teach anyone. I cannot do any other things. I just won't be able to any special projects. I won't be able to help with setting up the chairs. I won't be able to do anything with the choir. I can't do anything. I just want to sit through the Sunday worship and then go and do my own business. The minister thought for a moment and he replied, I believe you are in the wrong church. And he said like this, the church you are looking for is 3 blocks down the street on the right. This man followed the preacher's direction and soon came to an abandoned, closed down church building, a dead church which has gone out of business. Committed people, if they are not there in the church, this would happen to any church. If committed people are not in churches, this can happen to any church. One of the reasons why many of the churches are closing down in places like United States is because of lack of committed people in the churches. Someone was saying people rank church attendance and participation with visiting grandpa's grave, or calling your college roommate, or viewing a new wing of the art museum. He said like this: you have every intention of doing it unless, of course, something else important comes up. You have every intention to do it unless, of course, something else important comes up. People coming to a church with no commitments just for the sake of coming to a church cannot help the growth of a church. The local church is a place where people are from different backgrounds with all kinds of limitations. Though there are imperfections with any local church, still it is the Lord's major avenue through which He accomplishes His work. Though there are a lot of imperfections with any local church, still this is the Lord's avenue through which God accomplishes His work. And therefore you and I are supposed to have a greater commitment to the church. Commitment to the church is deeper even than the regular attendance of the church. Commitment compels you and I to involve in the church activities. Commitment makes you to open your hands and your houses for the Lord. Commitment forces you to remain loyal to the church and say good about the church, to say good about your fellow believers in the church. Yes, that is the greatness of the commitment that we see in this couple, Priscilla and Aquila. Thirdly, we see the lesson of partnership. Firstly, I said lesson of service. Secondly, I said lesson of commitment. And thirdly, the lesson of partnership. Now moving down through the list, we see from verse 5 the Apostle Paul referring to a lot of people. For instance, in verse 6 he speaks about Mary, who had worked hard for the Lord. In verse 7 he refers to Andronicus and Junia, who were fellow prisoners with him and who were notable among the apostles. In verse 9 he says about Urbane, who was a colleague with him. In verse 13 he says about Rufus, who was chosen by God. In all those verses, he was referring to a number of people. The peculiarity of all these people were, we can see them as people of service, people of commitment. At the same time, they were people who were partnering with him in the expansion of the kingdom of God. These folks worked for the God. They all worked together with the Apostle Paul for the expansion of the kingdom of God. Church is the place where you and I work together for God. It's not one man show, but everyone have a collective responsibility, a collective contribution in the church. Sad to say, many churches in the present times can better be seen from the picture of a football game going on stadium where a football game is going on, where 22 players doing everything and 80,000 people watching what is happening there. Many a time 20% of the people, this is the statistics that the some organizations came up with. They said 20% of the people in the church, most of the time they does the stuff regarding to the church, and 80% of them remain as spectators without doing anything, just allowing others to do the things for the church. Too many spectators and not enough players. The team is failing. The Apostle Paul is telling, yes, I can share from my own experience. I had a lot of partners who worked along with me, who prayed along with me, who uplifted me in my trouble, who committed themselves even to lay their necks for me. Yes, they were a partner, a group of people who were partnering along with me. That is the reason for my success today morning, friends. That is what you and I need. A partnering with the ministry of the Lord, helping hands and encouraging words. That is what we need. I heard a story about Jimmy Durante, one of the great entertainers of a generation ago. Once he was asked to be a part of a show in a World War Seconds of veterans. He told these organizers that he cannot come because he's tight with his schedule. He was very busy and he could afford only, if possible, only a few minutes. And if they don't mind, he's ready to come for a few minutes. That's what he told them. And this man came to the stage for that special meeting, and he showed up just for a few minutes. He came to the stage and he did some program, and immediately after he was about to leave, he saw the people were shouting. A great applause is going on. The applause grew louder, and he was staying there and there for a long time. After the time went on and on and on, and he started his program, he continued his program, and after some time, after half an hour, he finished his program. He came out of the stage and somebody asked him, I thought you are about to leave in 10 minutes. And he said, yes, I want to leave, but there is a reason. Look at the audience. There is something I had seen so impressive. He said, there are two people sitting in the front row. The peculiarity of these two people, both of them lost one of their hands in one of the wars. Both of them have only one hands. And when this man was presenting his show, both of them were together clapping and making a great noise, applauding him, making a great noise, congratulating him. That scene impressed me, that made me to stay there and observe them and be encouraged by them. That is why I stayed long. See, that two people with one hands, they were clapping their hands and making a loud noise to congratulate and appreciate that man. That made a change in him. Friends, that is what we need with all our limitations, with all our inabilities, helping each other, encouraging each other, working together, partnering with each other for the ministry of the Lord. That is what you and I need in this generation. I want to conclude my words with this statement. Our true commitment to the Lord will be reflected in our service to the church and our partnership in the ministry of God. Our true commitment to the church, our true commitment to the Lord will be reflected in our service to the church and our partnership in the ministry of the Lord.